And almost all resellers work on this same commission-driven philosophy. Because at the bottom line, those websites are advertisers. They're not really travel companies. They're not, for the most part, designing and delivering travel and doing quality control on travel and really pushing experiences to be better. They're more about advertising and selling. And that's what their bottom line is. And that's fair enough. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We just have to recognize that is the structure that they have. And it just grew to where I didn't necessarily have a philosophical problem with that model, because I do think it plays an important role, but it should be one role in an ecosystem where there are other ways that travelers can connect with the places that they want to visit.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Now Boarding episode. My guest today is a travel industry leader. He's dedicated to creating ethical and inclusive travel experiences. He's got a degree in international development and an experience spanning the US and Germany, and he's now back in the US. He has helped companies thrive while staying true to his values. So currently, he leads Painted Circle, which is a platform that supports local communities and promotes direct bookings for authentic travel. He's also a coach, and he guides travel businesses in elevating guest experiences and strategies. So it seems like my guest today is on a mission to make travel a force for good. Thank you so much for joining me today, Charles.
Thank you so much. And yes, I'm on a mission. Several people are on a mission. It's important that we work on it, but thank you so much for that great introduction.
Yeah, no, I think collectively, if we work on it, there's bound to be results at some point or the other. So we just keep striving and just marching on. So, yeah, Charles, let's start with what inspired you to actually dedicate your career to creating these experiences?
Wow, that's a good question. And I wish I had a really good, like, scientific reason or data-driven response to tell you why I got into this. But I think similar to a lot of people who work in tourism, I fell into it by not really by accident, but it just happened that way. I studied international development in Washington, D.C., and I did part of my studies in Germany. And so for a while, I had a back and forth existence between the two places. And at some point, I was living in Washington and realized that I was ready for a change. And at that point, I moved back to Germany and just took a job working with a tour company. It was a great way to just land back in Berlin and just figure out what I wanted to do getting back to Germany. And I ended up loving working in tourism. I loved working with the guests, and I happened to work for a company that was just full of some very interesting people, and it stuck. So I started working for this company and quickly realized that it was going to be more fulfilling to work on designing different types of experiences and working on like systems that we would use. And so from there, I just grew into a career working in tourism and just never looked back. So it was one of those happy accidents of jumping into something, not really knowing what was going to happen, and then realizing that there was this whole world within tourism that could actually be quite. And so what started off as being something very fun to do turned into something very meaningful and something that really gives me a lot of joy to work on every day.
Yeah, and so that kind of became a passion for you. So, what exactly sparked the idea for Painted Circle, which is the company that, correct me if I'm wrong, you founded, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
When when I was working in Germany, we had one branch in Berlin and another in Munich, and our company expanded, and eventually we ended up with a footprint in several different countries in the EU and a few locations in the United States as well. And one of the roles that I had there was working with our partners. And within travel, you have all kinds of different partners that come together in order to make travel seamless for travelers. And one of those partners that we worked with, just so many other companies, were, and we all know these. These are these big websites online, such as TripAdvisor and Expedia, Get Your Guide, Booking.com. There's really big companies that help all of us when we travel to find what it is that we're going to do. We can make our hotel reservations and plan our activities and things like that. And one of the roles that I had was liaising with these different resellers. For travelers, the idea is that you make a booking and it all goes very seamlessly. Behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes
Yeah.
into this with negotiating the pricing and remitting payments and how does the booking data get connected. And so for those of us working in the office, there's a lot of legwork that goes into these relationships. There's also a lot of money that goes into these relationships. And for our team, we started realizing that there was a lot of missed opportunity with the money that we were, in essence, spending in order to be present on some of these websites. And we had a great relationship with our resellers. I think at one point we worked with more than 80 different resellers that were bringing guests into Germany. And they're very important relationships to have, but they come at a cost. And for the travelers, they don't really see it. But behind the scenes, not only are we trying to do the legwork, but there's a big cost that goes to resellers. And if we look at, like, from the traveler's perspective, if you spend 100 euros on a tour or $100 on a tour, about 25 or 30 of those dollars or euros go to the website where you booked your activity. It never goes to the company that offers your tour. It never goes to the hotel where you actually spend the night. And so that's 25 to 30% of traveler spending never goes to the same community that you go to. And when we crunch the numbers on that, it really adds up. And if
Yeah.
you're a startup business, if you're that little mom and pop type tour company, or you're doing a food tour because you're passionate about food, there's so many cool things that you can do. You're losing 25 to 30% of the revenue right at the very beginning. And so
All that the website is doing is literally connecting you to, so they're like a connector, but the actual work behind creating the tour and the guest experience is done by the, like you mentioned, the startup or the tour company or whoever it may be. And if they lose
it
out
is.
on that 25%, which goes to the website for doing nothing really, can understand that's a shame, because then it's not really going back to where it should, the money.
And
Yeah.
I will want to mention that there are some things that are positive about working with these large websites. And some of those benefits include the huge market share that they're able to access. So if you are a startup company, working with a reseller is a great way to establish an initial funnel of customers. It's a way for you to really expand with, although high costs, some controllable costs with how much you're advertising. Because if you're working through a reseller, you're paying them to do advertising for you.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad. One of the things that I think is important is that we have diversity with how these business structures work. And almost all resellers work on this same commission-driven philosophy. Because at the bottom line, those websites are advertisers. They're not really travel companies. They're not, for the most part, designing and delivering travel and doing quality control on travel and really pushing experiences to be better. They're more about advertising and selling. And
Right.
that's what their bottom line is. And
Right.
that's fair enough. I,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We just have to recognize that is the structure that they have. And it just grew to where I didn't necessarily have a philosophical problem with that model, because I do think it plays an important role, but it should be one role in an ecosystem where there are other ways that travelers can connect with the places that they want to visit. And the idea behind Painted Circle was to come up with a more circular approach to how we could structure the whole traveler business connection, how that relationship could work. And also how businesses work together in order to support this ecosystem rather than being more and more reliant on those large travel websites that don't really have much skin in the game for individual companies like those of us who build companies and dedicate ourselves to creating those experiences for our guests. So we started Painted Circle with this idea of let's take a, it was almost more of a project. How can we create a travel website that does not use commissions? And does that even make sense? And that's where we started. So we reverse engineered that and tried to figure out what could be a business model that will work in order to provide a very similar type experience for travelers, but the money sticks. It sticks in the place that the traveler goes to. How can we do that so that it's just as easy for the traveler? Ideally, it costs the same or less for the traveler, but more money sticks locally. How do we take the status quo and turn it into a win-win situation? And so that's where we realized if we take a collaborative, circular approach and step back from seeing ourselves as advertisers and just the platform that people pay to use, we start looking at it from a purpose. And that's where the ethos started for the Painted Circle platform.
So, do you create travel experiences for travelers? So, what exactly happens? So travelers who are looking at an experience in a certain part of the world, do you help create that experience for the traveler without taking a commission, but you work with the different communities or different enterprises who are at the end of the travel experience, in the sense that the traveler actually is going to that particular, whatever it may be, hotel or a safari or whatever it may be. So it's really what you do.
What's great is my job now with Painted Circle is super cool because I get to meet other people who are the experts on what they do. And
Who
so when I
are
circle back
who
to
Okay,
the
who
role,
are experts in what they do.
exactly,
Okay, okay.
exactly. When I think back to the role that I had when I worked in Germany with my company there, those of us in that team were the experts on that location. And the type of tours that we operated, that was what was in our wheelhouse. And so I know how important it is when you're a traveler to make your bookings with teams of people that really know their stuff. They're committed to the local community, they know it inside and out, and they know how to really give each guest the experience that's going to be great for them. And you can really only do that if you're a local expert. And so my role with Painted Circle is I'm finding those teams of people all around the world and I'm bringing them into the Painted Circle website so that travelers can find them. So when you're a traveler and you're looking to go to India, for example, you can find these great companies in India that I'm going through my network, I'm talking with people there, I'm getting recommendations from them about other companies that are really superlative, and we're bringing them onto the site. Painted Circle then allows the traveler to connect directly with those local travel providers. And so I'm not supposed to
Yeah,
come up
no.
with all these activities because I'm not a local expert. But this way we can bring those teams onto Painted Circle and do it in a way that it's zero extraction. So when you're the traveler, you're not paying me at all for connecting you with the local tour operator. You actually just go direct to them, get the full experience of what you want to do when you travel there. And the money that you spend also doesn't flow through me. It goes directly from you, the traveler, to the business where you pay for your experience. I just think that's the more fair way to do it. And it also means that the businesses that are so good at what they do actually get a chance to work directly with the traveler.
Yeah.
That's where the magic can happen.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, because what the traveler wants as an experience, because it's not it's not your, so I don't know what word to use here, but you may have personally gone there and had the experience, but you're not the one who is a part. It's not like your daily thing where you have a complete understanding of what that experience will actually offer the travelers. Yeah, so it's much better to be connected directly to the source and help them
Right.
understand it, and then create and tailor make an experience that benefits you. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when you go someplace and you have an experience and it's really good, it's also your experience.
Yeah,
And every traveler is different.
yeah,
And so when you work with a travel company that is a local expert, they're going to be really good at figuring out what is going to give you the right experience when you go there. And if they've got a really good portfolio and a level of experience, they'll be able to really figure out, okay, this traveler is really going to be into more physically active type things. This person's going to be more luxury driven. This person's going to want to take things home with them. This person's going to want pictures. This person's a morning person. This person's not going to want to be bothered in the morning. And so that that experienced company will make sure
will,
that two people going to the same place both have amazing times, even if the experiences are vastly different
yeah,
from each other. And
yeah.
so that's the thing about working with a company like that who will put the time into making sure that you have a great experience, not just run you through the machinery that they run
Yeah.
everybody through.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because you're right. Every individual has a different way of looking at things and when they travel to a particular destination. So for them to be able to directly connect with the source makes a lot of sense. And you as a platform are able to do that. No, that's very interesting. But of course, I want to talk to you about impactful and authentic travel. So, a lot of the companies that are on your platform and the ones that you've talked to and the ones who work with you, what is the level of authenticity with each one of these companies? And because today, sustainable travel, today being very aware and conscious of being able to give back to the community of where you travel to, of being mindful, of understanding the culture. These are very important factors that a lot of people are trying to introduce in order for it to be an impactful travel and a sustainable way of traveling and creating this understanding. So, how do you work with, and I do understand, and I've seen that you are also coaching business travelers. So, if you could just walk me through all of this.
Sure. There's a lot of talk now about the ways that travel businesses substantiate how they can back up the claims that they make about how sustainable they are. And I feel that we are in, particularly in the EU, there's a green claims initiative that's out. And I think that we're at the very beginning of understanding how are companies going to be measured with the legitimacy of the claims that they put out there. And I think this is a good thing, but it can't be everything. I think that sometimes it's really hard to put metrics on every aspect of the sustainability journey. And so while I think that we're moving in the right direction, I think that it right now needs to still center around conversations around transparency
Yeah.
and being honest about things that are positive that businesses are doing, as well as things that maybe are less positive and still just aspirational. If we don't have metrics to show that something is, excuse me, something is accomplished, but that there's a philosophical motivation for a company to become more sustainable, I think those are companies that we should be supporting. It's not good enough just to continue supporting the few players that are already achieving sustainable results. We need to be encouraging more companies to join that group of businesses. So we as travelers need to be going to businesses that can be honest and say, we're a quarter of the way there. We have a 10-year plan and we're only 2 years into it. We need to support those companies. That's how they're going to get through the rest of their plan. And honestly, I think that sustainability is the whole conversation is missing a really important component, which is the financial side of sustainability. We talk a lot about what is our carbon footprint, what are the environmental consequences, what are we calculating that we can offset. It's a little tricky to figure out what are the financial consequences of sustainability. And is a business sustainable from a financial standpoint? And so the role that I think Painted Circle plays in this journey is making sure that we are an ethical partner for travel businesses in that we don't take the money from them. We let them earn the money from travelers that they should be earning, and they locally can then spend that money according to whatever their own sustainability needs are. For travelers, I think that there's a great need for all of us to recognize that there's none of us has ever traveled in a completely sustainable kind of way.
Yeah.
And we can't be seeing sustainability as like an elitist thing. It really affects all of us. And I've certainly traveled in ways in the past that if I could go back in time, I would say, oh, that probably was not the best thing to do for the environment. Or I wish I had booked a different activity or with a different provider. But the whole thing is we can't always go back in time and make things perfect. All we can do is learn from that and try to do better each time we travel in the future. And that's an important thing for all of us to realize. We have to stop shaming people for the kinds of choices they make when they travel. As soon as any of us get on a plane, there's a consequence to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was
But
going to say, and that like you're saying, there is when there's money, people have the aspiration of wanting to travel from one end of the world to the other, and the only way in which you can do it is get onto a plane, and that in itself is not a sustainable way to travel. But what's the option? Yeah. So,
when we think about impact as well, because you
yeah.
were asking about impact, I think that we also have to recognize there's such a huge cost if we don't travel. But travel is fundamental, I think, to creating the kind of world that we want and also the quality of lives that we want to have. And when we think
And
about
yeah, and I
the
also
impact that
believe,
we have on the
yeah,
places that we go,
correct. Yeah. And Barcelona is a plum example because
yeah.
there are, and currently it's a lot in the news because it's like over tourism is what it is suffering from at the moment. And it's unfortunate that the kind of I won't say all travelers, but a lot of the travelers who come here take things for granted and they behave in a certain way, which I think is it's not conducive for the locals because they are also getting pushed out and because they can't afford to be living in Barcelona any longer. Yes, because of over tourism, there's a lot of money coming into the city. We're forgetting the very, very basic of how you're giving back to the people of Barcelona with money, but and of course the creating jobs because there are lots of people come here, eat, drink, and they have experiences. So there's a lot of employment in the service industry, but there's also that sense of not being ethical and not really allowing the people to. I see signs saying foreigners go home or tourists go home, or I saw a sign lately, a poster somewhere saying we need to sleep, so be quiet, or something like that. And so Barcelona, therefore, is a huge example of not being where the impact is headed in the wrong direction. Yeah.
It's a bit of a cautionary tale with places like Barcelona, and I think we've seen also other typical examples like Venice as well that have that kind of crush that's created with concentration of tourists. And so it is like the impact of visitors is in your face in
Yeah.
places like that. And what I would love for travelers to do is also think about what is the impact on you as the traveler? What is it that, what's the impression that experience makes for you? Because sometimes I think we always think about having a positive impact when we travel is something that we take to a place and we're the saviors. We're taking them business, we're taking them money, we're taking them all these different things that we might deposit, and we're doing something positive to help them. And I think that's a great mentality to have, but think about it almost more selfishly. What do you get out of it? Because this is supposed to be a two-way street. And even though you might have the sense that you're helping a place by going to it and depositing some of your money there, there's so much that all of us can learn from wherever we go.
Correct.
There,
Yeah.
and so the
Yeah.
impact can go both directions. And even if you go to a place that is perhaps less advanced, the infrastructure is not good. We always have this concept of developed versus underdeveloped. Even if you go to a place that's classified differently, there will be an impact on you. And you should be able to take that home because there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
And even people who have what our societies would say are simpler lives oftentimes have benefits that we don't have.
Correct.
There's social connection, there's joy in simple things, there is perhaps something that we should be learning
Yeah.
from them. And in
Yeah.
places like Barcelona, we should be learning how do we go home and make sure that our homes are a place that can embrace tourism in a more balanced kind of way. We've seen the risks of that on our trip. How can I take that home and help my own community based on what I've learned when I went somewhere else? So we have to make that impact journey a two-way journey, not just from us to them, but hey, it's made an impression on me. And if that can be something that we learn from, then I think we'll continue to seek out going places where we can actually challenge our perceptions on the world. We can challenge the things that we've thought about in the past. Maybe that reaffirms the way that we feel, or maybe we grow as people. And that's why I love travel so much. It's like the kind of education that never stops. We
No,
all are force
absolutely.
fed information as kids
Yeah.
in school. And then when we become adults, we stop learning things the same way. And when we travel, we're forced to learn again.
Yeah, I
And that's
think
such an
it's,
important
yeah,
thing.
no, totally. And I think it's a way to enrich yourself and, and, but I think what's important is to be able to also immerse yourself in, because obviously, if you're traveling to destination that you've never been to, where the language is different, the culture is different, I think it's enriching and important to be able to immerse yourself in that culture, even if it's for a couple of days and you understand how the people there live. There's that sense of community, there's a sense of just being able to hang out with the people that you care for. There are no pressures, the kind of food you eat. There is so much. Again, I'm coming back to Barcelona, this whole conversation about. I've had a lot of Catalan people say to me that why do people travel to Barcelona and go to a Starbucks or go to a Taco Bell or go or to a McDonald's or just to have cheap food, whereas they can go into a little cafe which is so local and have that authentic local coffee, for example, or a bocadilla, or whatever it may be. So these are the things which I feel small little ways in which you can give back. And that poor, not poor, but that little sandwich place is probably earning, they put their heart and soul into their little enterprise. And you just walk past it because one, you want to eat cheap food, and two, or there is the other end of the spectrum where you want to go to a Michelin star restaurant if you can afford to do it. So I think that's just the food aspect of it. But I feel that I mean, that the way I look at it is I think it's so important to, and like you mentioned, education through books is one thing, but to be able to educate yourself by getting involved and immersing yourself in different experiences and different cultures and taking away from it and actually being able to go back home and say, oh, yeah, I could also do this, as you mentioned earlier, and I could also bring it into my way of life. Let's just start with me rather than trying to expand it further. Start with you because every culture and every experience is different and is a learning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I love what you mentioned about the little sandwich. When I was very young, my dad had that kind of stuck with me is when we would travel someplace, like to different countries, he enjoyed going into hardware stores.
okay.
And it's like a very unusual thing to do. But when you go into a hardware store, you start to see very curious things. And it's, oh, wow, what do these things even do? What is in people's homes that you need this? And you can actually try to work through conversations with people. And it's like a store full of conversation starters. And you really start thinking, here are everyday things. You've got local people coming in trying to solve problems in their houses and buying the tools that they need. And so you see like a real life, like tourists are not going to go hang out in a hardware store. And so
Correct.
that was a way that you are just thrust right into a purely 100% local space.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to do that. So even now, when we travel, even if it's just for a few minutes, we'll pop in to a hardware store if we're walking by one and just be like, okay, let's take a break from the touristy stuff. Let's pop in here. And it's just one of those things. And then you start realizing, okay, we can actually go into that little restaurant that isn't on our guidebook. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like we don't have to go places just because we read about them on Yelp or TripAdvisor. We can actually go into different places, roll the dice. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but that's part of the travel experience. And sometimes when you have unexpected or off color experiences, those are the ones that you remember
Yeah.
and you're going to tell your friends about when you get back home. And so it doesn't have to be the same experience that everybody else has. You don't have to check it off. Go have your own experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so interesting that your dad liked to walk into hardware stores, which is such an unusual thing to do. But you're absolutely right. The kind you then interact with the local people and you also observe. I think observation is also a key when you're walking the streets or when you're in a desolate place or wherever you may in nature, in a nature reserve or a rainforest or wherever you may be. I think that's so important to observe your surroundings and be one with your surroundings. That is such an enriching experience. So out of all the different companies that you work with and the different destinations, which one, I know it's probably very difficult for you to pinpoint and identify just one, but from the top of your head, one one destination where you feel that they are really, and all the people that you work with within that destination are really working hard to create this impact and create a mindset amongst the travelers to be more aware and be more sustainable.
I don't think that I work with any companies who aren't doing everything they can. And one of the things that's great about running what at this point is still a small travel website compared to the big ones is that I'd have to estimate, but I would say that I've probably had a personal one-on-one conversation like this with more than 80% of the companies that have profiles on Painted Circle. So I've actually spoken with them and heard their stories and what they're about. So I don't think we have anyone who isn't running their business for days. There are different kind of journeys, different paths to take. We have a few companies in places like Finland who have huge amounts of documented systems for sustainability, and that comes up. It makes sense because that environment is one that has a lot of government intervention in sustainability, and there's a lot of resources for that. So it's great to work with partners there that can showcase that through their business, but it also blends in with the guest experience beautifully. I think that overall, possibly just by the volume of people that I've been able to connect with in India, I would say that there are some really remarkable places there because India is a place that is a difficult travel location by comparative, stances. If you were to compare India to Germany, for example, anyone can get on a plane and go to Germany and you're going to be fine. You need a little bit more preparation going to a place like India. I've spent time there myself and feel like in the 3 or 4 weeks that I was in India, I only touched a small portion of that country because it's so huge and so
Yeah.
diverse. And within a place that has this kind of stereotype of chaos and corruption and just everything jammed together, there are people doing remarkable things with sustainable travel products. And not only that, like really high quality experiences. We've got a few lodges that are on Painted Circle that people have really just put their hearts into and building these to be sustainable and involving the local communities and seeing their businesses as a way to uplift people. These are people doing these types of businesses in places that so many of the Western side of the world may look down on. But there's so much to admire about what they're doing that I wish that more places in the West had that same motivation and that same like, drive to build these types of businesses. So India is a place that comes to mind for sure. There's a few folks that do rafting experiences in the Himalayas. Amazing because they look at it from guest experience. They look at it from a safety standpoint. They look at it from sustainability from an environmental standpoint. They look at it for how does it impact locals to have all of these challenging places to do business and they're making it work in really high quality kind of ways. So that's where my mind would go if I had to pick one location that has surprised me and is a place that I get a lot of inspiration from.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're absolutely right that India is just so diverse. And there is you're right, there's so much chaos, but there seems to be a method to this chaos. And you are also right that there are so many people who are trying to make who are very focused on creating these one is these experiences and two is actually giving back to the community and bringing them together and using sustainable products and they're working with each other. So someone who's creating sustainable products is also a vendor for the company and they're involving the local community to I know of a few places where that's how they operate. They educate the locals, they get them to work on their whatever their setup is and they educate the children and they have vendors who do locally produced products and they use those in their spaces. Yeah, no, India is and every corner of the country is so different. You think you're in a different
Mhm.
country. Yeah, no,
Oh,
India.
yeah. And it makes me think of what we were talking about a second ago with like certifications and sustainability initiatives. And those don't necessarily exist the same way in places like India as they do in like a Nordic country.
Yeah,
But when you're a traveler, you can feel it.
yeah,
And so that's what I was meaning about how it's hard to quantify some of these sustainability initiatives. And I love places like those in India that you may not have the data behind it and you may not have the numbers, but you can actually go there and you can see it and you can
feel it.
and so you get the data in a different kind of way. It
Yeah,
doesn't come to you in a PDF.
Yeah.
but you get the
It's
data
the
from your
real,
own
yeah, it's the
experience.
real deal. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. No, that's incredible. Yeah, this was so interesting, Charles. I could go on and on, but any last thoughts before we wind up the conversation? Anything with,
Yes.
yeah,
I would say if you are a traveler and you have either gone down the rabbit hole looking at sustainability, or you're a traveler who is like, oh, I've never really paid attention to sustainability and I probably won't because it's more expensive and limiting, I would say really take a fresh look because I think that no matter where you are as a traveler, there is a benefit that you get from looking for sustainable and ethical travel. And it's going to stick with you forever. And I don't think sustainable travel is more expensive. And I don't think that it's more unattainable. I think that as more of us are getting connected, we're going to see that sustainable travel is better travel. And in many cases, it can actually be more cost effective because if we think about the opposite of sustainable, it's unsustainable. And so
correct.
those are businesses that really are not operating efficiently. They're probably burning through their cash. You're spending money that they don't know how to put it to good use. We would not invest in businesses like that as individuals. We would want to invest in businesses that are sustainable, that are going to be around and they're going to continue to thrive. And if you're a traveler anywhere on that spectrum, I would just say go travel. And there's a lot of websites that you can use. Painted Circle is very new. And so I would love for anyone who's interested to check it out and see what we're building because we're a collaborative effort that's building this platform. And you can go there and use it for free. Another thing that I would put out there as a request is if you've had a really good experience with a travel provider, let me know because I would love to contact them, learn more about their business, and see if we can create a profile for them on Painted Circle. It might help them to attract more travelers who can then book directly and not pay through an online website that's going to take too much of a fee from them. The best way for me to grow our network is through word of mouth from travelers who've had really good experiences. When I first started, someone said, oh, you can just go online and scrape the internet and get all these businesses onto your website. And I could, but that's not really the goal. The goal is
Yeah.
to not find every business, it's to find the businesses that we as travelers love.
Yeah.
And also the new businesses who are saying, all right, here I am, let's do something different. Let's find those businesses as well. If you know about those, then definitely check it out. There's a page, paintedcircle.com/promo/nowboarding. It's a great place to start
Oh, now boarding is
to
the
just get.
show. Now boarding is the show that you're on at the moment because
Yes, so
yeah.
we just popped that together just so that anyone listening to this show can actually just go there because that way you can remember the name of it. And that'll
Okay.
just get you started to
Okay, now
see.
I get it. Sorry, now I get it. Because
Yeah,
I,
perfect.
I thought this is like a coincidence that you have something on your website which mentions now boarding, and I thought that was a coincidence. But clearly, okay, now I understand
No,
what you're
it
saying.
is
Okay.
just for anyone listening to this
Yeah.
show.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's for anyone listening. And like I said, the site is free. We have a travel pass that some travelers do purchase because you can get travel discounts at all these great businesses. But anyway, on that web page they can find out more. But I do encourage anyone to join the site for free and to help all of us build this out. We're building out a really cool community, and it really only works when we hear from travelers about great places that they go and check out the site. They can contact me through the site directly. You're not dealing with a big, huge travel company. It's me and a few other passionate people that are trying to
Yeah.
put this together.
Yeah.
But so far, we're seeing that it is something that allows us to create some positive impact and create this like mutually beneficial relationship between travelers and the communities that they go to that just blends into the way that we're going to travel anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I would love for people to check out and contact me with feedback and suggestions. I love hearing from travelers.
That's amazing. Yeah, because a personal experience is better than someone just like randomly, like you said, searching for it on the internet and getting reviews of places. I think if someone reaches out to you directly and gives you their personal experience and shares it with you, I think it will, yeah, absolutely. The more of that, the better. So it's again a give and take, right? Because you have people reaching out to you and you're then able to expand and you're able to then help them reach out to businesses that you work with closely, that you've already vetted, so you're familiar with them. I think it would be great for it to be working both ways. And thank you for bringing in now boarding as well. It took me a second to
Oh,
get what
you're
you were
welcome.
saying, but yeah, thank you. And I really enjoyed this conversation, Charles, and more power to you. And I know it's really small at the moment, but I can see that the direction that you're headed in, it's definitely going to, Painted Circle is definitely going to get the space that it deserves. So
I
appreciate this
think so
conversation.
too. And thank and really this is possible for us to start a platform like this because of people like you who are helping to share this journey that we're on with other people. And it helps us to break out of the networks that of people that we have so that more people can learn about what we're doing. So I really appreciate your platform and your podcast. And I particularly like that your guests talk about such varied topics because we realize how complex the sustainability journey really
Yeah.
is. And I'm very appreciative to you helping to give a voice to all of us. There's so many people working behind the scenes on things that we're not always the best at going out and shouting about what we're doing. And
Yeah.
so it's great to talk with you and to share this journey. So thank you very much for inviting me onto the show.
Thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate it.